This is a good time to remember that the Famicom only is part of Konami's output. Now in 1987 it is one of their two major platforms, but they had a lot going on with the MSX as well. The MSX lacked hardware support for smooth scrolling like the Famicom did, so while the hardware was comparable, it tended to get more cerebral games. And to account for the difficulty of scrolling, games on the MSX often stuck to single-screen views. One of Konami's big hits for the MSX in 1986 was Majo Densetsu, which had an English title on the box of Nightmare, though the title really means something like Demonic Castle Adventure. And yes, that's the same Majo as in Akumajo Dracula. When they made a sequel, they decided to port it to the Famicom as well. But this is one of those cases where the port is a completely different game from the original. The MSX version has the English title The Maze of Galious on it. The Famicom lacks that, but does have the Japanese title Daimashiyou Galious, which, if I may be really loose with the translation, could be called High Warlock Galious in English. That's the title that most Famicom fans use. I need to mention a couple special things about the packaging too. Daimashiyou Galious was the first Konami game where they did not manufacture the cart. The games from Konami's own production line have a little hole in the upper left-hand side. Supposedly it's so that you could carry your games on a string. But this game and a handful of others were manufactured by Nintendo, and so they use a standard Nintendo shell. The other thing is that my copy has a special modification. A sticker's been applied to the top, giving the title of the game. The lack of top labeling on the Famicom cartridges is always a problem. And the magazine Famitsu regularly would have stickers in the magazine that you would apply to the top of your cartridge. They're even color-coded for different genres. I wouldn't call cartridges that have these stickers applied to them desirable. I just love finding these things that connect me to the person who got the game originally. The story of the game is that after Poporon rescued Aphrodite in the first game, they went off and had a kid together. That child is abducted by the High Warlock Galious to sacrifice to the devil, and being good parents as well as superpowered warriors, they go after him. The game is a side-scrolling action-adventure very similar to Metroid. You'll wander around this hub map initially, find your way to a new location, get access to power-ups that will open up new paths, and backtrack around trying to find power-ups. It's a pretty big and involved game. In fact, that was a problem for me. I've never finished the game myself. Years ago I played it to the third or fourth world, and for this outing I tried to get a walkthrough to follow. But all the useful resources I found were for the MSX game. So I was playing without a guide or map, and so I was going really slow. I didn't even make it to the first boss before I had to stop. This is a big game, and you're definitely going to want to map it. While you're walking around and fighting, you press start to bring up the menu. The top two options are for Poporon and Aphrodite, and picking one of those will switch between them. They each have their own health bar, but they share the rest of their equipment. Poporon will smash rocks easier, can open certain doors, and has a more controllable jump. Aphrodite's jump is higher, but it's always full strength. She also gets more extra shots with the ranged weapons, and takes less damage while swimming. There's also sections of the game where only one of them can go in. And speaking of going in, when you encounter these doors, you press down to enter them. Some will take you to a whole new region of the map. In the main map, there is a save room, and some of these passages just have hints. The remaining 4 menu options are for your equipment, items that you have to use, the map, which is an item you have to collect, and accessories, which grant you a permanent effect. While I was playing the game, I didn't find any sub-weapons, but if you manage to find one, they're activated by pressing up and hitting B. Just like Castlevania weapons. The few items that I found in the game were a maximum life increase, a new sword that could smash blocks, and a ring that would teleport me to the save room or to the exit of the world I was in. You'll probably notice the experience bar, but it's not really an RPG in that sense. Filling it up refills your life. That's the only way to recover health, so it doesn't pay to try to protect a character that's getting weak. They have to kill more enemies to get their life back. Of course, you could always leave the world and go someplace with easier to defeat enemies. It does make recovering health a bit of a grind, though. I don't have a lot more to say about Daimashiyou Galious. It's an enormous game, but the principles are pretty simple. Fight, search, get item, use item to access new location. It was one of the very first games that I got with my Famicom, and it's one that I like, but I've never really found the time to go back and really try to complete it. I do think it's the most interesting action-adventure game we've seen so far for the system. If it wasn't for the fact that it was so difficult to recover life, I wouldn't hesitate to give it a high recommendation. As it stands, though, it takes a little bit of patience to play this one. I think it's another great game from Konami, but people remember the MSX version while this one tends to get overlooked.